Come see us doing live shows. We'll be in Los Angeles, Honolulu, Baltimore, Atlantic City, Cohoes, New York, Providence, Rhode Island. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets, and only jimmydore.com. We have a special guest on with us. Richard Medhurst is a British journalist born in Damascus, Syria. He's based at the United Nations and covers international relations, U.S. politics, and the Middle East. He's also a contributor to Press TV, Black Agenda Report, and other international news outlets. Welcome to the show, Richard Medhurst. Hello, Richard.
Hi, Jimmy. Good to be on.
So I'm having you on because the bad news is Syrians are celebrating in the street after Assad government falls. So that's the headline. Of course, that's going to be the headline. And the sub-headline is, but worries remain as Abu Mohammed al-Jilani, leader of what was once an al-Qaeda offshoot. The guy has a $10 million bounty on his head right now from the U.S. government because he's that big of a... That's the guy who they just installed as leader of Syria, just so you know. And I just want to show you what this is all about for real. So they've been wanting to overthrow Syria for a couple of decades, if not more. This has been thought up in the early 90s, actually. In fact, here's what General Wesley Clark found out after 1991. Here we go. Watch this. This was a talk he gave in 2007. Listen to this.
He said, but one thing we did learn, he said, we learned that we can use our military in the region, in the Middle East, and the Soviets won't stop us. He said, and we've got about 5 or 10 years to clean up those old Soviet client regimes, Syria, Iran, Iraq, before the next great superpower comes on to challenge us. And it was like, I'm coming out of the Mojave Desert. I've been training troops. I haven't been thinking geostrategy for some time. And suddenly a guy just sort of shoves this nugget at you. Well, you remember it. It was a pretty stunning thing. You mean, the purpose of the military is to start wars and change governments. It's not to sort of deter conflict. We're going to invade countries, and my mind was spinning, and I put that aside. It was like a nugget that you hold on to. This country was taken over by a group of people with a policy coup. Wolfowitz and Cheney and Rumsfeld and you could name a half dozen other collaborators from the Project for a New American Century. They wanted us to destabilize the Middle East, turn it upside down, make it under our control. It went back to those comments in 1991. Now, did anybody ever tell you that? Was there a national dialogue on this? Did senators and congressmen stand up and denounce this plan? Was there a full-fledged American debate on it? Absolutely not. And there still isn't. And that's why we're failing in Iraq. Because Iran and Syria know about the plan. All you have to do is read.
So that's been a plan for a long time. That's been the plan for the United States and Israel to destabilize the Middle East, all the people that Israel sees as its enemy. So we did Iraq, then we did Libya, we did Afghanistan. Now we're doing Syria. The only one left now is Iran. Yeah. And I'll prove it to you. Here's one more. I'm going to show you the same guy, and he's going to make an even more stark point.
I knew why. Because I'd been through the Pentagon right after 9/11. About 10 days after 9/11, I went through the Pentagon and I saw Secretary Rumsfeld and Deputy Secretary Wolfowitz. I went downstairs just to say hello to some of the people on the Joint Staff who used to work for me. And one of the generals called me in. He said, "Sir, you got to come in. You got to come in and talk to me a second." I said, "Well, you're too busy." He said, "No." He says, "We've made the decision. We're going to war with Iraq." This was on or about the 20th of September. I said, "We're going to war with Iraq. Why?" He said, "I don't know." He said, "I guess they don't know what else to do." So I said, "Well, did they find some information connecting Saddam to al-Qaeda?" He said, No. He says, "There's nothing new that way. They just made the decision to go to war with Iraq." He said, "I guess it's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we got a good military and we can take down governments. And he said, I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail. So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, are we still going to war with Iraq? And he said, oh, it's worse than that. He said, he reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper, and he said, I just got this down from upstairs, meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, this is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran. I said, is it classified? He said, yes, sir. I said, well, don't show it to me. And I saw.
And so there you have it. So the people who engineered 9/11 used 9/11 to destabilize the entire Middle East, to occupy Afghanistan for 20 years, to overthrow the most successful country in all of Africa, which was Libya, then Iraq, now Syria, and they're headed for Iran. And how are we doing it? Well, sometimes we use our military directly, but sometimes we get in bed with legit terrorists, people like Al-Qaeda, ISIS, which a lot of people say was invented by the United States and Israel. Hillary Clinton said we invented Al-Qaeda. And so just to prove that to you, here's Joe Biden committing a gaffe. He had to apologize for this. And what is a gaffe in Washington? When you accidentally tell the truth. And here it is.
What my constant cry was that our biggest problem is our allies. Our allies in the region were our largest problem in Syria. The Turks were great friends, and I have a great relationship with Erdogan, which I just spent a lot of time with. The Saudis, the Emiratis, etc. What were they doing? They were so determined to take down Assad and essentially have a proxy Sunni-Shia war. What did they do? They poured hundreds of millions of dollars and tens, thousands of tons of weapons into anyone who would fight against Assad, except that the people who were being supplied were al-Nusra and al-Qaeda and the extremist elements of jihadis coming from other parts of the world. Now you think I'm exaggerating? Take a look. Where did all of this go? So now what's happening? All of a sudden, everybody's awakened because this outfit called ISIL, which was al-Qaeda in Iraq, which when they were essentially thrown out of Iraq, found open space and territory in eastern Syria, worked with al-Nusra, who we declared a terrorist group early on, and we could not convince our colleagues to stop supplying them.
So the only lie he's telling there is that he's blaming it all on our allies and Turkey and Saudi Arabia and the Emirates. It was the United States also funded to at least a couple $2 billion the dirty war in Syria, and the CIA was funding, the Pentagon was funding different terrorist groups, so much so that even in the New York Times, it said that the Pentagon-backed terrorists were often fighting the CIA-backed terrorists inside Syria. That's how crazy it is. And of course, the White Helmets is also another terrorist organization fronting as a human rights organization. So let me bring in Richard Medhurst. And do the people in Europe know about this? Do certainly people in Iraq and Syria know about this? But tell me who else knows about this besides the people watching this show right now?
Nowhere near enough, Jimmy. I mean, most people are still completely ignorant about what happened in Syria. They still think that it was, some kind of grassroots revolution that just sprung up. And, they use like all this State Department lingo about, the butcher and the murderous regime. It's funny because they never talk about that, Joe Biden or Keir Starmer in the same way, even though you can pick any British or American leader and they certainly have a higher body count. But, it's unbelievable how people just can't see what's going on, given the fact that you know, when you have to spend $1 billion to overthrow someone, which is Operation Timber Sycamore, the CIA operation, you can't call that a revolution. And again, that's taxpayer money, and people still don't know about it. And you look at the British side, because you mentioned the white helmets. That's an MI6 operation, and they were running all these intelligence cutouts like ARC and Incostrat, and you know, like hundreds of different groups that they had launched as MI6 fronts, posing as humanitarian organizations or news groups or whatever it was, but basically to bombard public opinion with propaganda. And they did this both in Arabic and, of course, in English. So even inside of Syria, you've still got a lot of Syrians that don't know they've been duped. And, you know, while they're out celebrating, Israel is taking even more land. I'm sure we'll get into that in a second, because it's its own, you know, that invasion now is its own beast. But not enough people know about it. They just don't know enough. And, you know, this is all about, people need to understand it's an extension of what's happening in Gaza. That's what's going on. They've been wanting to get rid of Bashar al-Assad for a long, long time now, because he refused to normalize ties with Israel. He refused to abandon the Palestinian cause. He refused to allow a gas pipeline that would go from Qatar all the way to Turkey. And, you know, Erdogan has his own interests. He wants to fight the Kurds because he, you know, in Turkey, they think the Kurdish Workers' Party is a terrorist organization. And so they label its Syrian counterpart, the YPG, a terrorist organization. So what Erdogan is doing now by sending al-Jolani, this terrorist, and HTS is trying to surround the Kurds, who are, by the way, stealing oil with the United States. They're occupying 1/3 of Syria now, the United States. And he's trying to surround them. And you know, Biden here, he's again telling the truth, but also lying in a sense, because although they both want to get rid of Assad, they have different interests with the Kurds, the Americans and Turkey. And it's funny because they're both NATO countries, right? So in any case, you know, Turkey's trying to do that. Israel is trying to take more land, and the United States is trying to cripple the new Silk Road. I think people need to remember where Syria is located geographically. This is a crossroads between Europe, Africa, the Middle East, you know, Asia. It is the cradle of civilization. The old ancient Silk Road used to pass through Syria, and the new one was slated to as well. You know, Syria signed a strategic partnership with China. They were signed up for the Belt and Road Initiative, and it was to be the gateway to the Mediterranean Sea. So all of this trade that was going to go by land would end up in Tartus and Latakia on the coast, and then it would have a maritime route that way. And now that's shut down. And you know, the Americans are already occupying, as I said, 1/3 of Syria, and they've got an air base in El Tanaf, which is down below. So they're trying to cut off Iraq from Syria. And Syria is the key to everything. You look at the map; it connects Iran and Iraq to Palestine, to Lebanon and Palestine. So there's so many people with interests here, and you know, in the end, the result is not a grassroots revolution. It's something that's a Trojan horse, and it's made to look like a grassroots revolution. But it's about making sure that Israel's interests are taken care of, America's interests are taken care of, and Turkey's interests. That's what's going on, and not enough people know.
And people, I've reported this is. And it must have been at least 2017 when they were Qatar wanted to send a pipeline through Syria to Turkey. Now, yeah. And Syria wouldn't agree to that. So that's their interest in funding all the terrorists to overthrow Assad. And Assad wouldn't go along with that. And I'm going to guess the reason he wouldn't go along with that is because he's more aligned with Russia, and Russia wants that be an energy supplier and didn't want that competition. Yeah. And so this is all about money. This is all about natural resources. And then this is all about Israel expansion also. And so people don't know, they're never going to show those clips I just showed you. They're never going to show you this clip on the news. They're never going to show you this clip on the news. And they're never going to show you this clip on the news. They'll never show you any of these clips on the news. And what they'll do is they'll say, oh, you're an Assadist. You're an Assad apologist. The same thing they would say about Saddam Hussein when you said, hey, I don't think we should do this. So as he revealed, they had this plan before 9/11 to do this. So they just used 9/11 as the reason to go into Iraq. Why are we going to Iraq? Because they've had it planned for over a decade. It's called the Project for a New American Century. And that's what this was all about. And they wanted to destabilize. So was Iraq better off or worse off since we overthrew Saddam? Worse off. Is Libya better off or worse off since we overthrew Gaddafi? Worse off. Is Afghanistan better or worse off because of our 20-year occupation? Worse off. Is Syria going to be better off or worse off because we did a 10-year dirty war to overthrow Assad? Worse off. That doesn't mean I like Saddam Hussein. That doesn't mean I like the Taliban. That doesn't mean I like Assad. We're talking about stability and what is better for the region. Well, apparently, a bunch of interests converge. Turkey's, Israel, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the United States converge to destabilize Syria and destabilize Iraq, Libya. And so that's what's going on right now. And no one is going to tell you that. And I wouldn't be surprised if this video gets demonetized, but no one is going to tell you that in the news. No, the New York Times isn't going to tell you that. The Washington Post, the MSNBC, CNN, Fox, they're not going to tell you that. They're not going to show you these videos. They're not going to show you the current president of the United States telling people that our allies in the Middle East have been funding legit terrorist organizations on the United States terror list, our sworn enemies, the people who we say did 9/11. They're funding them to go do this. We've been funding them too, by the way, to go do this. And so again, once again, the United States are the world's terrorists. It's not actually Al-Qaeda. It's not actually ISIS or ISIL or al-Nusra. There are tools. They're the tools of American hegemony and empire and imperialism. That's what this is. And it's not hard to get this story right because I can get it right. So when you turn on Rachel Maddow tonight or Sean Hannity or Anderson Cooper, they're going to be lying to you because if I know the truth, you know they know the truth. And if you read the New York Times or the Jeff Bezos Washington Post, they will also be lying to you. Or they will bury the truth on page 67 and you have to turn it sideways and hold it up to the light to see the truth. Health insurance is broken. We all know that. Premiums are increasing, deductibles are getting larger, and claim denials are becoming more common. The headache of health insurance is exactly why our sponsor, Crowd Health, was created. Listen to this. I'm excited about this. It's not health insurance per se. It's a better way to pay for healthcare through crowdfunding. What? I'll tell you. Crowd Health gives its members the freedom to efficiently and affordably break free from the antiquated insurance system into a healthcare option that fits your needs. The insurance companies don't give you the peace of mind you need, but guess what? Crowd Health does. That's why your monthly membership includes the tools and services you need to get the highest quality healthcare. You'll get access to telemedicine visits, discounted prescription, and much more without doctors' networks messing everything up. Plus, you'll have access to your own personal care advocate who will help you navigate the complexities of health events and even negotiate bills on your behalf. And of course, you'll join the crowd, a group of members just like you who want to help pay for each other's unexpected medical events. It's time that you opt out of restrictive health insurance plans and let Crowd Health help you fit your healthcare needs. You can get started today for just $99 a month. It's not health insurance, it's Crowd Health. Join Crowd Health Revolution. Get help with your healthcare needs today for just $99 a month for your first 3 months with the code Jimmy at joincrowdhealth.com. Crowdhealth.com, not insurance. Learn more at joincrowdhealth.com. That's joincrowdhealth.com, code Jimmy. Go find out about it. I've learned about it. It makes a lot of sense. And it's better than normal health insurance. Go to joincrowdhealth.com use the code Jimmy. Come see us doing live shows. We'll be in Los Angeles, Honolulu, Baltimore, Atlantic City, Cohoes, New York, Providence, Rhode Island. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets, and only jimmydore.com.